Hello, Renee.
Hi, Dan. Oh, here I am.
Hi. I'm waiting for my co-presenter.
Great.
So I'm hoping she's got it figured out. Meenakshi. Hello.
Yeah, I just gave a presentation in the A sessions, but I couldn't record. I don't know why, but I didn't have the permission to record. So.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm recording here, so we'll have a very small conversation for a while. I'm hoping that the strange feeling here is like I was looking at my co-presenter. We were chatting back and forth, and now she's not here, and so
Maybe she joined a different room or something.
I don't know. This is B5, right?
This is. You can still choose to see all the breakout rooms, and this is B5. Yeah.
Yeah, this is B5.
Yeah, you can have all the list of everybody's groups and who's in each group.
Oh, you can.
Yeah.
Where is that? I'm looking at. Oh, I got to go to choose breakout room. Is that it? Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, so we are in B5. Sharing poetry, living community. And I wonder where my co-presenter went.
Yeah, maybe I got in the middle of my conference, I got kicked out because of my computer. Yeah, so there might be some difficulties.
Okay, I hope she didn't get kicked off at some point. I was looking right at her. Because I don't see her listed in any of the rooms. So, well, we'll give her, what is it? It's 1:18. We'll give her another couple of minutes here.
Right.
And then I'm not sure, can I chat? Let me see if I can.
Yeah, maybe I can go into another room and come back.
Well, I was saying, let's give it 2 minutes, and I'll go ahead and start. So there she is. Okay. Hello, Abigail. Do you want to test your mic? Because we need to know if we can hear you. You can't hear me? Let me see. All right. So Abigail, try under where the little microphone is at the bottom of your screen. Check and make sure that you've selected your microphone. Oh, you can't hear anything. Oh dear. Well, that's on that same control. I'm really sorry, Renee. We're all just sort of at the mercy of this thing. We can't get set up in advance. Oh, now we're by ourselves. Is a place for help.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Okay, I can hear you now.
Oh, I'm actually now using my phone.
Okay, well, I guess you'll have to do that.
Okay.
Since we can't get so here, let's try one last time here. So when you go to the bottom of when you track your thing to the bottom of the screen and you see mute stop video there in the lower left,
Mm-hmm.
There's a little caret next to the microphone.
Yeah.
So click on that.
Okay.
And it will let you select microphone and select a speaker.
Select microphone and
Select speaker. Do you have that?
no, I did the test the speaker, switch to phone, audio settings, select the speaker, yes.
Okay, same as system.
Yeah, I did all that.
You did all
And
that?
it didn't
All
work.
right. Well, let's
Yeah.
go. Let's go with the phone then. Hi,
Okay.
Ninachi. We are finally organized, I do believe. So I am going to share my screen.
All right.
And so welcome. This is the session Sharing Poetry, Living Community. And it is B5 on Thursday at 1:15. And the presenters are Don McCown, myself, and Abigail Zamandi. We're from Westchester University of Pennsylvania. So I want to start by talking a little bit about reading poetry in the classroom and where this idea that we're about to talk about has come from. So it comes from why can I not forward this?
All right, we
Okay,
can see
it comes from the practice of shared reading, which was developed by the Reader Organization in the UK more than 10 years ago. And it has been heavily researched by the Center for Research into Reading, Literature, and Society at the University of Liverpool, which is an interdisciplinary group of psychologists, anthropologists, English scholars who are looking at this program in which people read aloud together. That's the sum of it. So it started in 2008 in Merseyside in the Liverpool area, in libraries, to reach people who might not otherwise be reached by great literature. That was the driving force coming out of the English department at that time, to sort of expand who gets to read and who gets exposed to great literature. What they noticed was that it was really, really helpful for people who were lonely, who were depressed, who were anxious, who were in pain in some way. And they went off to take a look at that and to do research. And what they found is that it's very helpful in that way. So the groups themselves are not like a traditional book group. You don't have a book and you go home and read it and then come and talk about it. You read the book out loud and you talk about what is hot, what is interesting in each break that you make. So it's immediate. It's in the emotional moment as well as in the intellectual moment, because we're not talking about the story or about the poem. People are talking about how they feel, what it does to them, and linking it to their real lives. So it is anchored in the literature, it's anchored in the text, but it's really about what the members are sharing with each other. So it builds a unique kind of community. So it's an all-inclusive community because no one has to read aloud if they don't want to. And so that means that anyone can come. Anyone can attend. The text is there for you to read with your eyes, or it's there to hear with your ears. So if you have a low literacy level, if your English proficiency is not great, if you're lacking in visual acuity, or depending on how the group is run, if you're lacking in hearing, it can all be worked out. Everyone fits, everyone belongs. And so in the traditional group, which is 90 minutes, they read a story or a chapter or so from a novel, and they read a poem. And I went to the UK. I'm from Philadelphia. I went to the UK. I was trained to be a reader leader and brought it back to the US, to my university, as well as to a research venue that I have been working in, which is working with homeless veterans in the Veterans Administration Hospital near Westchester University. So we read a story, we get inside it, we're living inside it, and we're living what our lived experience is as well. So we're sharing our emotions inside this way of thinking, a way of thinking devised usually by a famous writer or poet. So what intrigued me as I was doing this was the response to poetry, because poetry is something that most people shut down on, but it seemed to really open people up. And a lot of my homeless veterans talked about that fact, is that, wow, okay, here's a 14-line sonnet by Shakespeare, and I got so much out of this. How is that possible? You know, I didn't think poetry did this. And so I began to use poetry in my classes at the university with undergraduates and graduate students, actually. And so I used this format of reading the poem. So it didn't start out, and it was never a scholarly endeavor or an academic endeavor. It was reading serious literature for what it brings us and for how we can connect. And so the readings that we do aren't instrumental. They're not meant to do something for you. I didn't read things with the homeless veterans that I thought would help them. I read things that were great, that had deep emotion and deep thought in them. And we plumbed that depth together. And that brought us together in ways that these gentlemen who had been through a lot in the military, as well as in trying to get themselves resettled in their lives, you know, they were able to make connections with each other and with the literature, and frankly with me, that they didn't think possible. That's the kind of thing that came out of the study that we had to unfortunately stop because of the pandemic. We're actually hoping to start it back up in a few weeks here. So the studies that have been done, and there are quite a number of them by the Center for Reading and Literature, they cross over a range of populations, a range of medical and mental health conditions, and include adults in prisons, homeless adults, people in recovery, people with depression, etc. And one area they haven't looked at is undergraduate students, surprisingly. So kind of our work, Abigail's and mine, gets to the heart of that a little bit. So as they looked out across what they found in their studies, they found that there were 5 things that shared reading really brought to people. One was an aliveness. The text comes alive and the people come alive along with it. The next is what they call creative inarticulacy. So trying to express things and make them clear to yourself and to the group is really, really helpful. That's the piece that starts to change people, as well as the emotional connections that we make. And that's an unusual thing for an undergraduate to be doing, to be sitting in a classroom making an emotional connection with a poem. The personal side of this is also extremely unusual for undergraduates, talking about how that made me feel and how that relates to what is going on in my life right now. Not what happens in the classroom. But when it does happen, the group comes together, participants notice and work with what the others are saying. So we see all of us see the human experience. We share it. And so that, to me, is what the real value is. So I want to try working with a poem, and we will do this together. Where did it go? So this is a poem, sort of an introduction to thinking through poetry. And it is here. Okay. So this is a poem by Mark Strand. It's called Eating Poetry. And so I'll read it first and we'll go through it. And then we'll read it again. So, eating poetry. Ink runs from the corners of my mouth. There is no happiness like mine. I have been eating poetry. The librarian does not believe what she sees. Her eyes are sad, and she walks with her hands in her dress. The poems are gone, the light is dim, the dogs are on the basement stairs and coming up. Their eyeballs roll, their blonde legs burn like brush. The poor librarian begins to stamp her feet and weep. She does not understand. When I get on my knees and lick her hand, she screams. I am a new man. I snarl at her and bark. I romp with joy in the bookish dark. And so, Abigail, I don't believe you've heard this poem before. And
No.
I decided that I would spring something on you in case we ended up in a situation like this. So
Yeah.
what struck you in this poem just on first reading? I know it's complicated and we need to read it again, but did anything grab hold of you?
Just the title alone saying eating poetry.
Yeah.
You start thinking, oh, wow. So this person lives, breathes, and just drinks poetry in a way.
Yeah. So here's someone, I guess, or maybe more, I'm not sure. Here's someone who really, really likes poetry, right? So much that they eat it.
Like there's no happiness like mine.
There is no. Yeah, that's it. I think that's a key line actually for us. There's no happiness like mine. And maybe this is describing this person's happiness in some way. I don't know, some very odd way. Anything else get you? Anything strike you as odd or maybe?
Gone, the light is dim. When the poems are gone, the light is dim. That's another.
Yeah. So what light is that? What is he talking about? Yeah. Interesting.
I guess it's the light of his happiness. When he's not reading poetry,
yeah,
there is nothing for him.
Okay.
So I don't understand, how do the dogs relate to this coming up the stairs and their eyeballs roll?
I mean, that's a pretty weird kind of an image, isn't it?
It gives me an impression of somebody that's lonely and alone. And sort of like poetry is what's keeping them alive and happy.
Yeah.
and they live with their dog.
Hmm.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. And then I want to mention that we have this librarian who's watching this happen, and she seems very disturbed by it.
Uh-huh.
So, so let's try it again here.
All
It
right.
runs from the corners of my mouth. There is no happiness like mine. I have been eating poetry. The librarian does not believe what she sees. Her eyes are sad, and she walks with her hands in her dress. The poems are gone. The light is dim. The dogs are on the basement stairs and coming up. Their eyeballs roll. Their blonde legs burn like brush. The poor librarian begins to stamp her feet and weep. She does not understand. When I get on my knees and lick her hand, she screams. I am a new man. I snarl at her and bark. I romp with joy in the bookish dark. So there it is again.
That is.
Anything happen second time around?
Everything shifts.
Yeah.
Like about the librarian, she doesn't understand. And where it says, when I get on my knees and lick her hand, she screams. Is that like when he looks for more poems or reading, she feels happy about that? I'm not sure. I'm so confused about.
I am not sure she's screaming with delight. I have to say that the way I'm reading it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I get on my knees and lick her hand, she screams. It's like this guy thinks he's a dog. What does he do?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Like he appreciates the librarian so much, and she doesn't understand all that.
yeah, he is doing what dogs do when they like someone. So he's
Yeah.
your hands have brought me this poetry. I'm gonna lick them. She's like, well,
Like,
yeah. So this line of there is no happiness like mine.
mine.
I keep coming back to that myself when I think about this one, that this is a poem about being in ecstasy, about, like the last line, I romp with joy,
Joy.
bookish dark. So what is it like for us when we have a moment of joy like that?
It's like
Does
the
this start
level
to
of
feel
happiness.
like it? What was that?
I said the level of happiness when you have that kind of joy to have something that you really, really love. And when you don't have it, you're kind of sad, and your life is just, the light is dim.
The light is dim, yeah. So he wants to keep his joy at the top of mind. He wants to keep it going.
And the only person that can keep his joy is the librarian.
So okay, yeah. And she
by
doesn't
giving
understand the thing at all, right? Her eyes are sad and she walks with her hands in her dress. She
yeah,
doesn't get his joy. Do we feel like that? I mean, just in our own lives, do we sometimes we're really, really happy and other people just stare at us, you know? It's like,
that,
how can you
I
be
think
that
this
way?
resonates with like everybody.
Pardon?
When it's not like everybody around you understands what you like. It's like even the poetry, you're reading this poetry, having so much fun with it. The person sitting next to you might not even understand what you're being happy
Yeah.
about.
And your experience is like crazy. The dogs
Yeah.
are on the basement stairs and coming up and they're catching fire. It seems like the dogs are on the basement stairs and coming up, their eyeballs roll,
Yeah.
their blonde legs burn like brush. They're so excited.
Yeah. It changes your whole persona and everything else.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
for those
exactly.
that don't understand,
Yeah. Like he says, I am a new man. I've been completely changed by this thing that I love. I don't know. I think that happens to us maybe more rarely than we would wish for, but I think it does. I think we
or
have.
things happen, change your thinking, change your way of maybe walking and all that stuff. And you don't even realize it until much later, or maybe years later, you sit back and reflect and say, oh, this is what happened. And at that moment, you don't see it. But as time goes by, you eventually open your eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe like the line about the librarian, she does not understand.
And
Maybe someday she will when she has this experience. I don't know. I really kind of like the librarian, though, I have to say.
yeah,
Her eyes are sad. She walks with her hands in her dress and she's looking over at this guy who's got ink dripping from the corners of his mouth. Maybe he's just reading. You don't know, but he's having a really good time and she's not. Yeah.
The librarian is just doing a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And him with the poetry, that is his life. Like, he cannot even express the way he feels about it,
Yeah.
which in life, so many things can make you come alive. And for him, poetry is what lights up his life,
Yes. Yeah.
I think.
Absolutely. So
Mhm.
so we all have those things.
And when a few people, yeah, I'm sorry.
Oddly,
I was saying,
go ahead.
when people have the same mind and love the same kind of things, like let's say they all love poetry, that can change their world.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
there's a sense in which I wish more people had been interested in sharing poetry at this conference, but so we don't get to share that. But from my own experience, I just wanted to share one thing, which is poetry is something that I really, really love. And I used to cut class in high school and go to the library. And the poetry section was way in the back, sort of in a little nook. And I would just take down books and put them next to me and sit on the floor and read poetry. And I can remember just being taken out of this world when I chanced upon Kenneth Rexroth's translations from the Japanese, these haiku and other short poems. And I just sat there and I read the whole book. And I remember walking out of the library feeling slightly inebriated by poetry. I don't think I had dogs coming up the basement stairs, but I was really in a whole different place. So I really relate to this poem.
Yeah,
So,
it's just said that people don't really understand poetry as part of education. And if it's not in the classroom environment, they will not understand it.
yeah, yeah. That's a good
So,
segue to what you're going to talk about, because it's time for you to talk. So
yeah, sure.
I'm gonna bring up your slides here.
Okay. All right, there we are.
There you are.
Okay. So the title still remains, given that participation in shared reading groups appears to increase mindfulness and improve quality of life in undergraduate students. What experiences most impact participants? A qualitative study that was done to investigate whether shared reading, a specific literature-based intervention, can benefit students, and how adding mindfulness-based interventions helps the shared reading experience. So the other goal was to evaluate and better understand the capacity of the target group to read and dialogue about short stories and poems. And then lastly, to identify the benefits possible with the incorporation of mindfulness-based interventions, sessions, and the opportunities for continuous growth and development, which is something that everybody needs to sort of like think about and see, can we identify any differences when you read poetry in a group? And our study was done using the grounded theory method, which is a systematic methodology that examines in-depth reports using inductive reasoning or first person, the subjective experience to explain the studied report's phenomena in detail. And our target group was the undergraduate at Westchester University, and it was a number of 6 people. And it was done at the Center of the Contemplative Studies, and the gender, educational level, and location were the only participants' demographic data used for that study. And we interviewed the students using the qualitative data, and the questions included how was the experience of the shared reading to you? And the second question was, is there a particular story or character or moment in a story or in the poem that had significant impact on the emotions? And participants were asked to describe the emotions, describe the way they felt. And the last question was, what was it like to be with these other people in the group? Meaning being with the other participants. And all the questions, while they were being answered, they were recorded, and we did an open coding and the focused coding. These codes were then analyzed thematically to capture how the most useful initial codes from study participants describe shared reading in the study and in their lives. So these are some of the stories and the poetry that was read. And it was done in 8 weeks. So every week there was a poem, there was a story read, and then afterwards a poem that sort of like relates to the story. Moving on to the next material, we did from the participants, we got some verbatim quotes from them. From like the question, how was the experience of shared reading to you? One of the answers was like, it was actually pretty good. When I first came in, I wasn't sure what to expect, but I was like, it was actually, and then you got to go around and introduce yourself, and then that helped start the week. And the second question was, one of the answers to that same question was like, it was a nice experience and the time was perfect in between my classes. So that gave me time to calm down by coming to the reading. So these participants were actually just like saying how they felt by being in a group and being with literally strangers, even though they were in a group, and how they came to have a connectedness. And one of the answers was, it was really good. I was nervous going into it because I am not a huge on meeting new people, but they were all super friendly, and King and Dawn really made it easy for them, which were the facilitators. King and Dawn were the facilitators of the program. And the other answer was like, yeah, that was awesome. And is there a particular story that, or a moment in the story that had a significant impact on your thinking or emotions? And the answer was like, I don't really think any specific thing had an impact. I think the overall, just the calmness of the stories, even though some of them were definitely filled with some action, I think just the overall story reading.
Yeah, I want to comment a little further on that, because I think that's a really telling statement about this, is that we don't select stories to do anything in particular to anyone. It's just what's going to happen and what's going to flower in this little community that we're building around the story. And so it may be, we read a couple of stories that, where somebody's house burned down or some terrible calamity is going on, and everybody at the end is like, wow, that was really cool. I feel so calm, because I think of the community that we created around it, that we could have that experience and talk about it. That was really beautiful. Sorry, I just had to pop that in there.
Yeah, I also like the answer where one actually said, I had pretty stressful days. And then after that 1 hour of being there, meaning being with the group, doing the shared reading, I wasn't as stressed. I felt less tense, and I felt it throughout, even in the next day.
Yeah.
So that sort of like changed their whole level of stress, being around a group and doing something totally different from the norm, I guess.
Yeah. So I want to highlight this for us here. This is exactly, I think, the point, is that people found it to be very calming and a great experience, even when we were reading something tragic, even when we were reading something really funny. When we read, say, Black Elvis or The Revenge of the Lawn, which are both really funny pieces, nevertheless, people felt that calm. Very interesting to me. So
it's like a level of connectedness that sort of like put people in that calmness experience, have that
Mhm.
calmness experience.
Yeah.
Because if you're reading it by yourself, I don't think it would feel the same. But because you're around other people and you're discussing it, it sort of like gives you a different aspect of what you would think if you were by yourself.
Yep. So, I mean,
So, talking about the discussion was like, well, the qualitative analysis indicated that shared reading and mindful-based interventions, they can be effective in lowering stress, sharpening your focus, and improving quality of life, which is what we were talking about earlier. And these findings must be interpreted in a view of several limitations, which is primarily, this included the constraints on the research process imposed by the small sample size. And secondly, the quantitative data from this mixed method study indicated that shared reading was has the capacity to promote well-being and enhance a sense of achievement, self-worth, and social engagement. And in addition to being an intrinsically enjoyable activity in itself, the qualitative analysis demonstrated that some participants found shared reading is a little odd, and participants were never steadfast and some had trouble concentrating.
so yeah, I think that's worth remarking on as well, is that not everybody took to it like a duck to water, but as they went through the process and came to understand what was happening, they did embrace it and found it. There we
Yeah,
go.
it was calming and enjoyable experience.
Yeah.
I can attest to that too, because when I started, I didn't understand what was going on. But on week 2, I was like, oh, I think I like this because it was changing everything in me. So
Right.
in conclusion, for continuous growth and development of shared reading as an intervention for undergraduate students, further investigation is required. So given the current challenges of the COVID-19 limitations, specific research on remote delivery of the intervention could be of value. And I hear the numbers are going up again. So
Yeah. We may need to do some more Zoom sessions of shared reading.
shared reading.
So I'm going to see. Here we go. So this is actually one of the poems that we read. So why don't you do this one with me?
Yep. On Turning 10 by Billy Collins. The whole idea of it makes me feel like I'm coming down with something worse than any stomachache or the headaches I get from reading in bad light, a kind of measles of the spirit, a mumps of the sight, a disfiguring chickenpox of the soul. You tell me it is too early to be looking back, but that is because you have forgotten the perfect simplicity of being one and the beautiful complexity introduced by two. But I can lie on my bed and remember every digit. At 4, I was an Arabian wizard. I could make myself invisible by drinking a glass of milk a certain way. At 7, I was a soldier. At 9, a prince. But now I am mostly at the window, watching the late afternoon light. Back then, It never fell so solemnly against the side of my tree house, and my bicycle never leaned against the garage as it does today. All the dark blue speed drained out of it. This is the beginning of sadness, I say to myself as I walk through the universe in my sneakers. It is time to say goodbye to my imaginary friends. Time to turn the first big number. It seems only yesterday I used to believe there was nothing under my skin but light. If you cut me, I could shine. But now, when I fall upon the sidewalks of life, I skin my knees, I bleed.
Hmm.
I like this poetry a lot.
Yeah, what is it about it that gets to you?
It's like on turning 10, you think, oh, this person is thinking about, they are turning 10. But when you read the whole story, you realize that this is an old person looking back at how everything has turned out. When they were
Mhm.
turning 10, so many things were happening and they were good, they were happy, they had the bike and all that. But now the bike is parked because they can't ride the bike. They are not strong anymore.
Mm,
It's like a frail person just thinking about all the good times they had when they were younger,
yeah.
when they were becoming a teenager, in
Hmm.
a way.
Yeah. So I really reacted to the measles of the spirit, mumps
Oh,
of the
spirit.
psyche, a disfiguring chicken pox of the soul. It's like, yeah, there's a change happening in me, and I'm not sure I like it. And I do remember all the ways in which, yeah, I guess our two poems have really kind of been about happiness in a way. Sort of this is sort of a backwards way, where now I'm looking at sadness, but interesting.
Yeah. It's like
Yeah,
one time they were so happy, young, free spirit, and now everything seems to
yeah. But
get
now I am
really.
mostly at the window watching the late afternoon light. Yeah, that sounds so much like an elderly person rather than a 10-year-old, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah, I think you may be right that this is kind of a look at our whole life, as well as that moment when we become conscious of our human experience. But this is really lovely, this passage. Back then, the afternoon light never fell so solemnly against the side of my treehouse, and my bicycle never leaned against the garage as it does today. All the dark blue speed drained out of it. I mean, that gives me goosebumps. That's a really, really amazing childhood image. You know?
Yeah. Like they had this good life. I like the part where, and my bicycle never leaned against the garage as it does
Yeah.
today. It can also mean physically he was strong and
Mm.
now he's frail.
Yeah. This is the
So
beginning of sadness. I say to myself as I walk through the universe in my sneakers. Things have become so big for him, right?
yeah.
That he's walking through the universe. So, and these three lines, I'm really a fan of. It seems
Okay.
only yesterday I used to believe there was nothing under my skin but light. If you cut
Yeah.
me, I could shine. Wow. And then,
That's a profound
yeah,
statement right there.
yeah. I mean, don't we feel that way as kids? It's like I am immortal. Nothing can stop me. I can do anything. I
Yeah,
really, I might be wearing a towel around my neck, but I really honestly am Superman, you know?
yeah, yeah, I can fly.
Yeah, I can fly. So I'm going to stop our share because they're prompting me that we have less than 4 minutes at this.
Okay.
So I have to figure out where the stop recording button is. And I want to thank you, Abigail, for doing this with me.
No problem.
It's wonderful to be at a conference presenting with a student. I really always enjoy that so much. And so there is no joy like mine. There is no happiness like mine.
Yeah,
I am
even
at
if
a
you were
conference. So I'm going to stop this, and I'm hoping that other people will at least get a chance to watch this and see what we had to say, and maybe get a little sense of how shared reading works.
yeah, most people don't
I think I
understand
might
it.
have to say something at the end here. Let me see. Nope, I don't think I do. This was B5 on Thursday.
B5, of course.